Macgregor joins us now. Colonel Macgregor, always a pleasure. My dear friend, thank you for coming back to the show. Sure, so late last week and over the weekend, the Israeli Defense Forces surrounded and destroyed the major hospital in Gaza, telling everyone ahead of time that they would discover a Hamas command and control center underneath and catch Hamas fighters. It wasn't a control center and didn't catch anybody. Is this a failure of intelligence or a deliberate effort to destroy Gaza by destroying a hospital?
Well, Judge, to sit here and speculate is probably pointless. We know what's true and what isn't. It didn't turn out to be what the Israelis anticipated or what perhaps they wanted to find. But in the meantime, the hospital is gone. And I think that's a precursor for what's coming across the boards. The idea is to now make it impossible for anyone to come back to Gaza who formerly lived there. I think that's the operation. And I think that mission is probably going to be accomplished.
And the goal of the IDF is to extricate and save hostages or to make Georgia unlimited?
I think making Georgia unlimited is the top priority, and that's not because they don't care about the hostages. They very much do. The problem is, they don't have the knowledge regarding where they are. It's a tough situation to be in. In fact, I would argue that they've been playing catch-up from the 7th of October. The whole intelligence apparatus has performed very poorly, so that's where they are. I don't know that there's much more to say about it, other than, yeah, Georgia is going to be flattened.
Does the Israeli government not see that the IDF's continued massive cruelty against civilians is likely to produce a regional war, which might very well be detrimental to Israel?
Well, what you're asking is whether or not the Israelis believe that they could be the target of a regional war. In other words, that they would have to face a whole series or a group of capable opponents. They don't think they believe that. And I think this is one of the core problems. Just as we took the position early on, first of all, that the Russians would never invade Ukraine. Secondly, when they did, they didn't know what they were doing, and they were in over their heads. Third, that they were incompetent and inept and could never recover from their alleged mistakes up front. And then finally, that the Russian economy was doomed and the society would collapse and revolt and remove Putin. I think you have a similar phenomenon right now in Israel, in Jerusalem. I think the attitude is, we're surrounded by mediocrities. They can't organize themselves. They're not capable. We just have to stay the course and get this job done. And we need to get it done quick because we understand that the support for us around the world will vanish. The longer this takes, the more hazardous it is for us. And they're betting very heavily on us, obviously, that we are their backstop and that our presence offshore and in the region with air and naval power will be enough to persuade the various actors in the region to do nothing. To stand by and watch the population of Gaza either killed or driven out of Gaza.
Do you think that the presence of American air and naval power sitting there is enough to deter Hezbollah, Turkey, Jordan from doing something militarily to restrain the Israelis or resist the Israelis?
I think that the truth is as follows. No one in that region, neither the Turkey nor the Iranians nor any of the Arabs and their governments want to war. It's not just with Israel. They're largely disinterested in war, period. They see their societies as fragile, their economies as fragile. They don't want to sustain the damage to their infrastructure that they know a war with Israel, and ultimately the United States would entail. However, they are not fools, and they are watching what's happening. And they know that this is the first stage in a multi-stage operation designed to create greater Israel from the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean. They know this. The Israelis have made that abundantly clear off and on for many years. This is not a secret. Now it's happening. It's happening because Mr. Netanyahu judges this is the opportune time to strike. His view is he's got us as his allies, that he effectively is calling the shots. And I think he is. I don't see much evidence that the Biden administration is doing anything other than talking. In the meantime, they're standing by with air and naval power to support the Israelis in the event that things get out of control. Now, I think they probably will. Will they get out of control this month, next month, or in 3 months? I don't know. But I think that the Israelis are, so to say, burning all of their bridges behind them in the region. Whenever they decide they've done enough, there will be no return to the former set of conditions that they lived under.
I want to ask you.
To
Speculate as a professional and career military officer how officers feel and react. Not talking about reservists, I'm talking about career military. When they are told they have to kill civilians, not
collateral, but,
as a target.
well, I've never had that experience, and I don't know that many of us alive today have. I am unconvinced that that's an order being given to the Israeli Defense Force. My experience with the professionals in the Israeli Defense Force is that they are actually very careful to try and minimize civilian loss of life and damage. Now, in this setting, that's an impossibility. It doesn't matter whether or not you're trying to avoid killing or harming civilians. You can't help but do that. It's the density of the population, the numbers of human beings that are essentially lost at sea now. They have nowhere to go except to run. And I'm sure that the Israeli officers know that. But I don't believe in my heart that the Israeli officers, under any circumstances, want to deliberately murder them. Now, I can't speak for every Israeli soldier, reservist, or otherwise carrying a weapon. I'm just saying, based on my experience, the Israeli officers do not feel that way.
They're not doing a very good job of failing to kill civilians that killed 13,000 already.
Well, let's face it. If you're going to attack from the air in a densely populated area, that's inevitable. There's nothing discretionary about it. And once you move in with ground forces and you take fire from a building above you, or you take fire from something in front of you, your predisposition is to immediately swing your gun to forward, load the round, and put it in the direction from which the fire came. You're not going to wait around and ask, well, I wonder who else is in that building. And by the way, perhaps that person didn't really mean to shoot at me. That thing doesn't occur to you, Judge. You want to stay alive. So I don't think it's a case of somebody who said, I want to go in and kill as many Arabs as I can. I think it's a case of a lot of soldiers that want to go in there and survive the experience.
Why do they drop 6 2,000-pound bombs on a refugee camp?
That's a different matter. That's a decision at the very highest levels. That's not something that people on the ground were asked about. That's an Air Force matter. We've done things like that.
2, Judge. Oh, yes, I know that. Yes, we have. We carpet-bombed Germany. We did a lot of carpet bombing.
Yeah, but we also did a lot of damage in Afghanistan and in Iraq. I mean, we had these wedding parties that were attacked and people were killed that had absolutely nothing to do with what are the individuals invited to the wedding.
What is the value of international war, of international law? If it's not going to be enforced and there's no accountability for its patent violation?
You just answered your own question. International law is irrelevant unless it's enforced. Who is going to enforce it, right? The problem with the United Nations. We haven't paid much attention to international law over the years. We're not signatory to or the law of the sea. We haven't signed on for any of these things. So it's what we choose or choose not to do. And I think that's the case with the Israelis at this point. All I'm saying is that my experience with Israeli army officers is that they do not deliberately kill civilians.